Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about how Dungeons and Dragons can help us unlock empathic mysteries years after we encounter the initial event. All right, so I'm an evangelical, so let's jump right into this. All right, I'm an evangelical Christian. By the way, before we go a minute further, there's going to be spoilers for Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power in this content. All right. So I'm an evangelical Christian, and I've read the Bible. I've read the Bible 11 times now, cover to cover, and I'm in my later years. It's harder to read now than it was before, only because I've kind of been over it again and again. I'm trying to kind of suss out the best parts, and so I use different ways to read to make sure that I'm going deeper, right? But probably maybe I would say the sixth or seventh time I read the Bible, there's a section where Jesus, it's in Luke 5, and they bring a man to him who most scholars say that he had palsy, okay? And so this man is brought to him, and he can't even really walk on his own. He's brought, they bring him to Jesus. And Jesus says to the man with palsy, he says this in the Holy Bible, in front of the scribes and the Pharisees, he says, man, your sins are forgiven. And the scribes and the Pharisees went bonkers. They're like, what? They were like, how dare you? You are a carpenter from Nazareth. Like, you don't have the right to forgive this man's sin. Only God can forgive sin, right? And then Jesus is like, oh, well, guess what? You don't see that I forgave his sin because that's kind of like an invisible task. But I'm gonna cure him now. And he says, what is easier, to say that your sins are forgiven, or to actually cure the guy? And he does. He cures the guy, right? And so for years I was like, I don't really get why the scribes and the Pharisees are upset. Like, Jesus has been rolling around saying profound things and healing literally thousands, like hundreds or thousands of people. He's been healing hundreds, and he's been feeding thousands, and he has miracles everywhere he goes. And I'm like, why are the scribes and Pharisees rolling so hard against Jesus? Don't they see it's Jesus, right? And I never really understood how the scribes and the Pharisees felt. I felt alien to their feeling. I never understood their outrage, right? Until I watched Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. So Galadriel, she captures Adar, okay? Now he is this evil elf who oversees these orcs from the Southlands, okay? Galadriel is hanging out with Halbrand, who is a human Southlander, okay? We're going to keep this simple. And then Galadriel is a Rivendell elf, okay? So we got all this going, right? And so basically, Halbrand captures Adar and says, I'm going to kill you, right? And Galadriel's like, hey, don't kill him. I need him, right? And he's like, you don't know what's going on between the two of us, man. This dude, harmed, people I care about. I'm going to take my revenge now. And she's like, no, you're not going to take your revenge now. I need to have a talk with him. So all your rage and all the justice that you need needs to wait, because I'm an elf and you're a human, right? Like, Galadriel is, man, she is straight the worst thing in Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. She is a very problematic character, right? But here's the thing. Here's what she says, all right? So first of all, then Galadriel takes Adar, questions him, walks out of that conversation with very upset, and sits down next to Halbrand. And Galadriel says the most ridiculous, just outrageously stupid, ignorant, repugnant statement I've ever heard in Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. She says to Halbrand, she says, whatever he did to you, whatever you did to him, be free of it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You don't even know what happens. You're marinated in ignorance. You have no standing with the men of Southland, right? He is a man of the Southland. Men, the kingdom of men, right? There's the kingdom of elves, the kingdom of men, not making it gendered. And the kingdom of orcs, right? You have no standing in his kingdom, right? You have no understanding of his history. You don't have any understanding of his experience, right? And you don't have the ability to free him of anything. He still feels the fury. He still has the memories. You can't do anything for him, right? And in that moment, I understood everything the scribes and the Pharisees were thinking. They thought Christ was a man, right? And the reality is, Galadriel is nothing but an elf. She has no supernatural powers, right? She can't free anybody of anything, right? And here she is making these proclamations that she has no ability to put into effect, right? And no standing to even command or request, right? Like, she has no standing, no abilities, no business. And her statement is repugnant. It is horribly ineffective. It ignores the experience of the person in front of her. It is outrageously repugnant, right? Galadriel's a repugnant character in Rings of Power. She is absolutely horrible and the worst villain in the show by far worse than Sauron, right? Like, it's so bad. And so here's the thing. Rings of Power, 10 years after I really understood what the scribes and Pharisees were saying, helped me perfectly understand and empathize with the scribes and Pharisees. I felt their pain. I knew exactly their frustration, exactly why they felt it. Now, the scribes and Pharisees were wrong. I'm not wrong about Galadriel. She is nothing, right? She has nothing to say to Halbrand. She is ignorant to the core. She doesn't know who she's sitting next to. She doesn't know his experience, and she has no ability to free him from anything. So to say, be free from it, either as a request or a command, is the most repugnant, soulless, most unempathetic thing you could possibly say, right? And it's just utterly, horribly, terribly wrong, right? But this is where Dungeons and Dragons comes in. We experience things. We see them in our real lives. We encounter them in the classics that we enjoy. We read books. We watch films. And we encounter a thing, but we don't always understand it from all aspects, right? I understood why Jesus was saying, I'm free, be forgiven of your sins, right? I understood his part, but I never understood the scribes and the Pharisees. And that's what Dungeons and Dragons does. It puts us at the table in circumstances that are completely unpredictable to us, completely unpredictable to Dungeon Master, that have incredible personal resonance because it is the only story in the world that is specifically crafted to the people who are enjoying it in the moment. No other storytelling medium humanity has ever created allows this, right? And it has the interruption of fate itself. It is the most powerful form of storytelling. And while sacred texts can unlock, religious truths for me, Dungeons and Dragons can unlock incredible empathetic understanding of secular moments in our lives, right? Dungeons and Dragons has no religious power. It has no, it's not supernatural in any way. It's just the most powerful, piercing, most important narrative engine that humanity has ever created. And it does allow seculars to create things that approach wisdom far more powerfully than anything that has ever been produced, than any other type of storytelling that has ever been produced previously. It is absolutely incredibly profound, right? All that is my humble opinion. I'm looking forward to when you can have this moment, when you can spike through and understand something at a better level, the way I did with Rings of Power, right? I fully understand the frustrations and the vexation of the scribes and the Pharisees when they spoke to Jesus, right? They thought, they were like, how dare you? You are not God, right? Like, now they were 100% wrong, right? But now I see it, right? Like, Galadriel is instructing Halbrand to forgive Adar, and she has no understanding, no standing, no understanding, no standing within his culture, right? No knowledge. It's galling. What she did was galling, right? And and while the scribes and Pharisees were wrong, I'm right. And I'm hoping that you will get this experience where something turns and Dungeons and Dragons unlocks a piece of wisdom that you missed the first time you encountered it. I'm convinced that Dungeons and Dragons can do this for millions of people and will as we go forward. All that's my humble opinion. I'm ready to hear yours. I'm eager to hear yours. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.